sent that link.
I'll just check. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
let's start. Let's.
Let's start. Welcome back, all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. And today we have an excellent session developing emotional intelligence, and we have none other than Mr. Vijay. Request all of you to put yourselves on mute so that we'll be able to hear clearly. A very interesting session in front of us. Vijay himself is a business psychologist, consultant, and psychometrician. Developed good tests, and he has also developed a very interesting EQ test, and I'm sure he'll be talking about that also. And let's listen from Vijay. Over to you, Vijay. Not wasting any more time here over here. I want to give you a lot of time to present your whole today's session. Thank you so much again, once again, to all of you for joining this interesting session. Please keep all your questions being typed over the chat box. We will take it up around 11:40, 45 or so. Thank you. Vijay, welcome, and thank you so much. And over to you, Vijay.
Thank you, Annapurna. Um, this is like, I think it was a test on my emotional intelligence, because the first time it has happened that my internet got cut off completely. So I'm using internet from my mobile, because as a matter of precaution, I always use a backup. Nothing is kind of that reliable in life. So if you want things to go smooth, you have to have a backup. Okay, come on. Let's get into the presentation directly. I think what you see on your screen is the full presentation, and depending upon your setting, you must be seeing some videos. Okay, all right. So let's start. Now, I would like to have a quick overview of what is emotional intelligence before I get into the development part of it, because it is important to understand what we are talking about when we talk about emotional intelligence and what exactly we can develop. So I'm going to have a quick look at the definition that we have shared till now, and it's a kind of very much established and common definition of emotional intelligence. So it is on your screen. The ability to understand one's own emotion, understand others' emotions, regulate one's own emotions, as Annapurna was talking, like regulating like you regulate a fan, and influence others' emotions, which is sometimes, depending upon who is talking about it, it is called sometimes managing others, sometimes it is called managing relationship, because some people say that you cannot really manage others. What you can manage is the relationship between you and the other person. So these four things together are called emotional intelligence. So it is not, what is important to understand here is that it is not one thing or one ability, but a cluster of related abilities. And here I'm using a new term, ability. So let's look at what is ability. So ability is the capacity to do something. Okay, so I used another term, capacity. So what is capacity? Capacity is unrealized potential. Well, so another new term, what is potential? Potential is energy in dormant form. We all understand what is dormant form, but energy, let's be clear about this definition. What is energy? And energy is that which moves everything. So from the very abstract idea of energy, which moves everything. In fact, in psychology, as in physics, you have the idea of energy, which is never destroyed, never created, changes from form, and it changes from one thing to another thing. It transfers. In the same way, in psychology, we have an idea called psychic energy. And emotional intelligence, or all kind of intelligence, anything which is a psychological phenomenon, is an expression of that energy. So when we are talking about emotional intelligence, we are talking about multiple things at the same time. So we are talking about some abilities, some capacity. Sometimes people talk about emotional intelligence as the result of the intelligence that they see. For example, managing the relationships. That's not emotional intelligence per se. That is the impact or the result or the outcome of emotional intelligence. So here we need to understand these nuances and these differences quite clearly in order to use it for development. If we are using it for talking only, or for communicating, or for propagating some idea or marketing some idea, then it's okay to not understand the finer nuances. But if we are talking about developing something, we need to understand exactly what we are talking about and how then we can decide or devise some ways of developing it. So here I would discuss with you few challenges in understanding the emotional intelligence. The first challenge is that we get confused, or there is a too much of overlap between indicator and indicated. So for example, when somebody talks about regulating one's own emotion, now regulating one's emotion is an outcome of emotional intelligence. It is not the emotional intelligence per se, it is an outcome. So if you have higher level of emotional intelligence, you become better at regulating your emotion. So you see the cause and effect. So don't confuse the indicator with what is being indicated. So that we need to keep in mind while understanding, particularly for development of emotional intelligence. The second thing same is, there are certain things in psychology which are direct, very few things like behavior. You see behavior clearly, or you see somebody's actions very, very clearly. But then there are a lot of things which are indirect, inferred from what you see. So you see somebody, let's say, asking you, how are you today? How do you feel? When, what is your reaction to this situation? And you sense from that there is a sense of empathy in that person. The person wants to understand your perspective. So what you see is behavior, what you infer is empathy. So we need to make that distinction also very clear, whether we are talking about something that we are seeing or observing as an object, or something which we are inferring from what we are seeing. The same idea can be presented differently as the messenger and the message. This is more little philosophical way of looking at it, is that there is a message and there is messenger. So this also creates problem in understanding the exact nature of emotional intelligence, that are we talking about the messenger, are we talking about the message itself? So finally, keeping all these three in mind, this is what I think is a process view of understanding emotional intelligence, is that you have certain abilities. Those abilities involved in certain process. They develop certain functioning in you, which is functioning is nothing but your habitual thing that you do. And then it leads to certain outcomes. So if we look at emotional intelligence and its reflection in that way, then we can focus on develop ability part for developing. We can focus on some other part for the process. We can focus on some other parts for creating it as a habit, creating as our normal functioning. So this is a model which I propose for developing emotional intelligence, is to separate the abilities, put the abilities into some process, and then do something with those process to develop a habit or develop functioning, and then it will lead to certain outcome, rather than focusing on the outcome. So let's see how different people or different theorists or different practitioners have hypothesized this process, this model, hypothesize emotional intelligence to understand, because from there we will know that the path of development of emotional intelligence will be different for different models that you follow, and you have to decide on your for yourself which is most applicable or most useful model for you. So first one is the model which is, we call it skill based model of emotional intelligence. It was proposed by Mayor, Salovey and Caruso, and it is propagated by MHS, Mental Health System UK. So this is that model. Sorry, mental health system is Baran's model, but this is Mayor, Salovey and Caruso's model of emotional intelligence. So what they say is that emotional intelligence is four functionings, four operations. One is perceiving emotions that you do through by faces and pictures, then using emotion that you do facilitation and sensation, then understanding emotion, blend and change, how emotions blend together and how they change, and then managing emotion. So social management and emotional management. So this is a process model of emotional intelligence based on certain skills. Then there is another model, and that model is purely like a personality. So it is here, emotional intelligence is conceptualized as personality trait. So this model is given by Baran, and this looks something like this. So if you see, I hope it is visible on your screen, big enough to read. This is all like, personality traits. For example, self-perception. It talks about self-regard, self-actualization. All these are not something which you can see as a skill, but they are the indicated, they are the messengers. So self-actualization you see, and then it gives you an indication that this person has high level of emotional intelligence. Same way, self-expression is the outcome, it's not the input, it's the output of it. And so all this is basically, it looks like more personality traits. So in the previous model, we saw that it looks like more process and function. This one, it looks like more personality trait as an outcome of it. And then there is a third model, which was developed by Goldman. And then my test was developed on this model, and I have extended this model. I took one part out, which was pure personality. I took one part out and I made it as a facet, like empathy. Empathy is a different thing in Goldman's model. So this is a let's say four box kind of model of emotional intelligence. This model is a mixed model of ability and personality, or skill and personality. So you see that it has four different categories, or four emotional competencies. One is understanding self, in which we have emotional self-awareness, which is more like a skill, being aware of your own emotion. It's not like an end product of something. Awareness is an input, not an output. Emotional literacy, this is again knowledge of different emotions. Self-assuredness, this is a personality aspect. It is not a skill, it is not knowledge, but it is a personality aspect. It's your characteristic way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Then the second cluster is managing self, which has emotional regulation, which is a skill. Adaptability, it's a trait. Optimism, it's a fundamental disposition. Self-motivation is also can be considered as a trait. It's not a skill. So a skill here is emotional regulation. Then understanding others. Empathy. Empathy is your fundamental disposition. Some people conceptualize empathy as a skill, as something which can be learned. And from my experience, I know that both are true. There are certain aspects of empathy which can be learned. For example, active listening. Anybody can be more active listener, and we will talk about it today. And we will especially look at some example of how to be more active listener. So empathy is both like as a personality trait, as a skill. Recognizing emotion, it's purely a skill. you can be, let's say, not interested in talking to people at all or engaging people with their emotions, but you can have very good level of recognizing the emotions. Analyzing emotion, this is also purely skill. Managing emotions, the fourth cluster, you have assertiveness, which is more like a personality trait. Collaboration is more personality trait. Influence is a skill. And developing others, like empathy, is a mix of skill and trait. So this is a mixed model of emotional intelligence. The test that I have developed is based on this model. And why I use this model and not any other model is that this I find quite comprehensive. This takes care of both the input and the output. It gives you a way of knowing what I need to develop and where I will see the impact of this development. So for example, if you develop your emotional vocabulary or emotional literacy more, you will see the impact of that on your self-assuredness level and your emotional self-awareness. Okay, so does that make sense? Any question till here? Please put it in the chat box if you have any question till here. Then I will talk about the steps of challenges to developing the emotions. Like
Vijay, if you can put your video on, because people are requesting to see your face also while you're speaking, if it is possible.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. All the time I was thinking that my video is on.
No. Just
I'm so sorry. Okay.
Just on your video.
Okay.
Okay. There's a question. How is understanding self and managing self are different? You want to answer it right now, or you'll take it a little later?
Just because you understand what is going on, it is necessary for managing, but not that useful. Like there are people who understand very well their emotional state, but they don't know what to do with that. And that we see in kids, because in kids are like kind of in terms of emotions, like kids are something which is always under development. So you can see that very clearly, but the child knows that he or she is getting angry, but doesn't know how to channelize that anger. So in that way, understanding self and managing is different. Second level of difference comes that for understanding self, all you need is an introspection and self-observation. But managing self in a relational context, you always need a situation and other people. So you cannot be, let's say, good at managing self just by yourself. You will need a second person. And that's what I will talk about when I'll talk about developing the emotional intelligence and how to go about developing.
There's also one more clarification which Ajay is asking: is assertiveness a skill or a trait?
Assertiveness is a mix of both. It's a skill as well. Yeah, because it has a disposition, a fundamental disposition.
Vijay?
Is that, yes? Do you see me? Hear me or not? Hello?
Vijay, we are losing out.
Okay, I hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm connected again. Good. Maybe the internet came back, so it connected with the Wi-Fi. Okay. So what I was saying is that assertiveness is a mix of both. It's an amalgamation of both, of preference, of fundamental disposition. There are some people who are more for others, and there are some who are more for self. And if you look at yourself and your behavior, you will see that you have been largely either more for self or more for others, and you're trying to strike a balance. So there are people who are overly helpful and they discount their own need and desires in order to be useful to someone else, so somebody. And of course, that naturally that somebody is something that they value, that they that they respect. And there are people who are very, very particular about their boundaries and maintaining their boundaries and not letting anybody cross those boundaries. So in that way, it's a disposition. At the same time, it requires communication and a way of expressing, which is the skill part. So it's a mix of both.
Okay, I think you continue because we'll take the questions a little later, and also
It is
please.
important to understand things, because what happens is that if something is missing at the understanding level, then
Correct.
for development it will be like
Yeah.
that's
No,
why.
I'm just trying to see if there is a connected question at this point of time. Then I'm taking it up.
No, there is
Otherwise,
nothing. I think we
yeah.
can move on. Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll take one more question now. One more has come up. He's saying, is managing self? We use EI for developing others. In managing self,
Hmm.
we use EI for developing others.
No. Like the short answer is no, and long answer I'm covering this in the next slide. So
Yeah.
it will be.
And also the relationship between EI and Johari window.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I
that's
think.
very interesting thing. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm taking this, Milind.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think
So
so. That's.
challenges to develop emotional intelligence. So till now, I hope that we have a kind of clear idea of what emotional intelligence is, from the perspective of the input to it and output to it, the ability portion of it and the personality portion of it, the cause and effect portion of it, and what we learn and what we use. So always remember that thing, like you have ability, then ability, you put that ability to certain process, that process develops certain functioning, and that functioning develops certain outcome. So if you keep that in mind, that's the key to develop emotional intelligence. So, and then these are the challenges which you will encounter on the way. Is that one is the input output problem. What I call it is like, it's like, in computers we have I/O errors or I/O issues. So here it's like output of a process A goes as input in the process B. So for example, your emotional literacy will decide how much you can develop regulation. If literacy is low, then no matter how good you are, you could be potentially at regulation, your regulation will always be low. So the output of developing emotional literacy, which will be your emotional vocabulary, will go as an input into emotional regulation, which is basically changing the intensity and duration of emotion. So that's input output problem. And that basically brings us to this, the way we can identify this is that what are we really developing? So again, another example I want to give in terms of developing emotional intelligence, that think about it, developing strength versus developing muscle in physical world. So when you go to gym, your objective is to develop strength, and developing strength is different from developing muscle, because you can have very bulky, a lot of mass in your muscle with very little strength. So strength comes not from focusing on one aspect of development, but from interconnections of different aspects. So all the muscles in your body, when they are interconnected nicely and they are working coherently, then you develop strength. So the same goes for emotional intelligence, that you need to develop some muscles. For example, emotional literacy is a muscle. Analysis of emotion is muscle. And then you need to put them together. So you need to put them with empathy. You need to put them with assertiveness. These are the glue which binds those skills. And then the outcome of that is that you have a higher level of emotional functioning. And that leads to better outcome in life, like better relationship. It leads to more satisfaction with what you are doing. It leads to more involvement, more motivation, and you kind of see your path. So where are we developing it? That's another very important aspect. Um, Emotions are always developed in relationship. You cannot develop emotion in isolation. So there has to be a relationship. And then and by relationship I do not mean that, the typical colloquial meaning of word relationship, but there has to be an emotional exchange of emotion and emotional involvement of some other with you in order to develop your emotional intelligence. And there is a very famous saying in psychological development is that we say it takes two to understand one. You cannot understand or develop yourself by yourself, and that goes against all the so-called in vogue things of understand yourself, learn about yourself and you will develop. No, it doesn't happen like that. You need a second. So either you split your personality into two, one becomes the observer, one another becomes the observed, one becomes the mentor, another becomes the mentee, or you involve a significant other in order to help you with that process. And for most normal people, it's easier and it's more efficient to have a sounding board. And we will talk about it, like how to kind of create a sounding board and who can be your sounding board. So now I will go to the facets and I will go through the steps of developing emotional intelligence. So just for recall, these are the four clusters. They can be also looked at as competencies, which is basically cluster of behavior that leads to high performance. Ajay, you wrote that, can I go to the last slide? I can technically, but no, I think I went to last. Okay. So Ajay, you have to write in the challenges, right? Yep, challenges to develop emotional. This was the last slide. Yep. What is
Ajay,
your
you wanted
question?
this slide or the previous?
No, this one.
Okay.
So Ajay, please type your question quickly. This was the last slide.
Anything from here, Ajay?
I'm just typing in my question. Okay, my question really
Ask.
here is.
You can ask. It will be faster. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So my question here is, when we talk of developing it,
Mm-hmm.
what is, when we talk of the other person, that is where it takes two to understand one. Is this two, the second person, is he something like the accountability partner that we talk of in coaching?
Yeah, it could be accountability partner. It could be even coach. It could be a mentor. It could be your spouse. It could be your friend.
Okay, I think that answers my question.
So the whole point is that there has to be an other, because without that other, even understanding emotion is not possible. So it cannot be learned through self-observation only.
So that means the introspection can give us a certain degree. To go deeper, we require the outside support.
Yes. To develop it as a skill, as a competence, as something which you can use, you need. Otherwise, what happens is the whole development goes into one-sided. The person is like highly self-aware, but cannot have a normal, proper relationship with other people. And you see those kind of people all the time, like super intelligent, very aware about their own emotional needs also, but have very difficult time living with or adjusting with others. So many examples are there all the time.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So before we go into steps, there are like, I think 4 or 5 step model that I propose for developing emotional intelligence. So we just have a quick overview of these 4 again. So now, step 1, start with emotional literacy. Now, how to do that? Here I will do a small exercise with you to just give you an idea and give you some glimpse of what I mean by, why it is important to start with emotional literacy. So think about this. You can use the chat box for this exercise. Write words that include the word path in them. I will give like one example I have given in, like pathology. So please write in the chat box. We will take 1 minute. Pathway, yeah. Sociopath, empathy, pathogen, pathetic, telepathy, psychopath, sympathy, path breaking, pathfinder. You see some people wrote together the same thing. Empath, yeah. Pathogen, footpath, apathy, pathetic, pathway, pathogen already covered. Pathless, antipathy, allopathy, pathetic, sympathy, telepathy, retinopathy, pathfinder. We still have 13 seconds. Pathless, yeah, pathos, naturopathy, right path, homeopathy. I'm just excluding those things which were covered. So yeah, so that's done 1 minute. So we have roughly like 20 different words, you know, with path including in them. Now you have again 1 minute and write words that indicate some feeling or emotion. You have 1 minute. Anger, happy, smile, static, laugh, sad, excitement, love, trust, distress, humiliation, sad, joy, enlightenment, jealousy, sadness, disgust, calmness, broken, curious, nervous, hope, courtesy, ecstasy, furious, doubtful, kindness, ecstatic, sad, grief, joyous, cheerful, sadness, amused. Yeah, we have 10 seconds more. Love, sadness, excited, peculiar, desperate, rejection, entertainment, disgust, grateful, joyous. Okay, yeah, stop. So I see roughly 30 words related to emotion and roughly 20 words. It's just my guess, not exact number because I did not count exactly, but I made a guess. Now, if you look at it logically, there are 300 words of emotion. 100 people are there in this room, in this chat window. Now, and 300 words of emotion. There are roughly not more than 60 words of the word with path in them. So we generally, by the ratio of it, just by the ratio, we expect 5 times more words in emotions. But even in a group setting like this, where everybody is writing just 1 or 2 words, it is always that, most times it is that, the ratio between path word and emotion words is very low. Why does it happen? Generally, it happens because our vocabulary is stronger in non-emotion context than the emotion context. Now, language also plays a role because many a times emotions are quite archaic. Archaic means they come as not a fully developed thing, but something as a sensation. So because of that, sometimes we don't learn the words in a foreign language to express that. So language plays a role. But you can do that exercise for yourself in order to make an audit of your emotional literacy. And you see that you can see yourself how many different words of emotions that you know. And in order to have an external reference for that, I think Annapurna has a very nice list of emotional words. categorize and arrange properly. This website, designpeaklife.com, this also has a list of emotions. And what I like about this list is that it has list of emotions also from different cultures. So you can see some emotional words which are peculiar to particular culture and peculiar in their meaning. So that will basically broaden your horizon of emotional literacy. This is the first step for developing emotional intelligence. And then in order to make it more concrete for you, you can create your emotional map. Okay. Somebody tries to annotate, but I don't know what that annotation.
Yeah, I think so. Someone tried that. I think you can take it out.
Just I will see.
Clear all. There's an option clear all.
Yeah.
I know the option, but maybe the person means something. Okay. Okay, annotate here and clear all. Yeah. Okay, that's done. So make your own map. Map means a systematic organization of emotions that you have experienced or that you have learned as a typical pure cognitive learning, not like learning as by experience, but learning by knowledge. So that's the first step, to have a proper bigger vocabulary and a map. And here is an example of such a map taken from the same website. So what this person did is that put four quadrant: fear, anger, sadness, and happiness, like four basic primary emotion, and then mapped all other emotion around them. So between anger and fear, on the periphery of it is patience. Between anger and sadness, between anger and fear, at the center of it is courage and humility. So like that, you can make your own map. This will prepare the necessary conceptual framework in order to develop emotional intelligence further. So that's step one, emotional literacy. Step number two, self-inquiry. And the way you can do it is make a log, like a diary, and ask yourself 5 times a day. You know, like a true Muslim does namaz 5 times a day. In the same way, you have to ask yourself 5 times a day. Why 5 times? I don't know. Maybe I like Islam too much. So, but why 5 times? I don't know. I just find it more manageable thing to do 5 times a day. How am I feeling at this moment? That's the question you ask yourself. And then you get a response and write the response. And one thing I wanted to just kind of, okay. One thing which I wanted to warn here is that if your response comes something like, I feel like doing thing, it is not feeling, it is thinking. When you say, I feel like smashing my head over the wall, it's not feeling, it's thinking. You feel something else, and this is what you think about that feeling. So feel like is a sentence formation which indicates that there is no like the feeling is not noticed and not brought into consciousness, not brought into awareness, but feeling is immediately transformed into some kind of thinking. So what will be the correct way of writing it or seeing it is that I am frustrated, I am sad, I am interested, I'm intrigued. So when there is no feel like, but directly the name of the feeling, I'm frustrated, I'm happy, I'm elated. So right now, I want all of you to ask this question and write in the chat box what exactly you are feeling at the moment. And I will write mine also.
Please use I am while you're writing.
Yeah, this is a very nice example. The same thing, like someone wrote, "I feel like I'm free." So this is the processing of the feeling by the brain, by the rational brain, which is coming, and which is a hindrance into appreciating the feeling enough. And it is very important to appreciate, understand that feeling before you process it logically. So for developing emotional intelligence, that is very important. And some people wrote, "I'm feeling lucky, I'm enjoying, I'm confused, I'm attentive, I'm confident." Now, those are the proper feeling statement. I'm feeling relaxed, I'm feeling calm. So those are proper feeling statement. By doing this habitually, and if you do this not for many days, just for like 20-25 days, that would be enough. That will be enough to kind of develop some functioning or some habit, which will be very much helpful for you to develop that. Okay, so that's step 2, self-inquiry and uh, self-inquiry and writing that or noting it somewhere. If you're not a fan of writing, you just make you just make audio notes. And these days it is possible, like you have mobile, there are many apps which can make an audio notes, and then once in a week review that. So that way you will know what are the constellations of feeling or constellations of emotions that you are mostly aware of and traveling. And then you can see what are, there could be, you can, have a surprising encounter that there are certain feelings that you have never encountered in last 1 month. It's not that those feelings are not there. It's just that your mind is somehow consciously avoiding it or unconsciously avoiding it. Okay, so that's step 2, self-inquiry. Now this is where,
Vijay, just Vijay, 1 minute before you go to feeling, moods, and emotions, there was one query on emotional maps. You talked about emotional map. How can I do that map? So just if you could repeat that once again.
Yeah, emotional map is basically connecting related emotions with each other, and emotions which are far from other, keeping them like putting them in a visual form which is indicating that distance. For example, being angry is very different from being happy, but not opposite of it. Same way, but being angry and sad is closer to each other than being angry and happy. So like that, you have different location. Like if you consider, a space in which emotions play, then you will say that some emotions play together, some emotions are far from together, and putting that in some kind of visual form is emotional map. That helps you to navigate the path of emotions and the development of emotion and the movement of emotion in you, and especially in a group setting. It's very useful, that map. And there are multiple techniques. I can share something, after sharing this recording of the video. I can share with the same group. I can share something related to that, like how to make those maps.
Yeah, Vijay. So there is one more that we talked about, the emotional journal writing or emotional, noting down for 5 times a day. So can this be less also, less than 5? And can it be before sleep, like a reflectory note?
Yeah, that is very good question. Yeah,
Yeah, just go ahead.
This is an amazing question. Like,
yes.
There is a very nice story in a religious context. It was like, how often a person should have, to basically, the person was talking about brahmacharya or celibacy. So he said that how often a person should break the celibacy in their life. And the master said like once in life, because you will need an offspring to propagate your generation. So he said, but then if once in life is not enough, then what should I do? Yeah, okay, then maybe once in a year. Yeah, okay, but once in a year is also not enough, then what should I do? Yeah, okay, once in a month. But what if once in a month is not enough? Okay, once in a week. What is once in a week? What if once in a week is not enough? Okay, then every day. So they said, okay, but how many times in a day? And then the master said, put a kafan on your head and do it as many times as you want. So there is this tendency in mind to kind of play with the ideas and find ways. And then there is reality of the surrounding or the situation, or reality of the thing that you are dealing with. And then you have to decide what works best for you. So what I would suggest here is that, I think Shalini wrote that, it's very interesting thing, is that before going to sleep, if you do a kind of emotional journaling of your whole day, that is the next best alternative than asking for 5 times a day. I found 5 times a day is very kind of practical stuff, and it makes that rhythm. But then if not 5, do 3, 4. If not 4, do 3. If not 3, do 2. If not 2, do 1, but do something. So that's the point. Okay. So development step 3, connect to emotions. Now, once you have good enough vocabulary, and once you have a habit of identifying and labeling your emotions, then you can start seeing the constellation of emotions. And this is where you will need more the other person. And this is where you will need to differentiate between feeling, mood, and emotion. So feeling always has an evaluative component of it. Emotions by themselves are neither positive nor negative. They are just as they are. They are either unpleasant or pleasant. That's all. So they have their own positive thing. They have their own negative thing. Feeling always had some rational evaluation of that emotion. And mood is an kind of vague and general state in which you are. So mood is not something which you can point out at one thing. So it's a kind of general state. From the mood, you can get down to specific emotion that you are feeling. And it is important to kind of separate them in order to develop. So here I am going to present you a thoroughly kind of a research-based map, or the process of how emotions develop, how emotions appear, and how they develop. And here I'm not talking about emotional intelligence development, I'm talking about emotions as such. So this is the context in which emotion arises. And that's why I say always that it needs two to understand one, and it needs two to understand your emotion. So there is a situation, and in that situation, your mind focuses on certain things. Something happens, attention deployment it is called. Then it triggers something, you evaluate that, and then the manifestation of emotions happen. And manifestation happen at 5 different levels. One is cognitive level, another is biological level, fourth is motivational level, means it wants you to do something, to change something. That's motivational part. Experiential, you have some more than the biology. Experiential is basically expressed or sensual or sensing part of the emotion. And expressive is when you label it, when you verbalize it. So generally it happens first at biological level, means some chemical thing happens in your body. Then you sense it as emotion, then you label it, then you express it, and then you act on it. And then that action has some consequence. So all this whole process, which takes roughly 5 minutes to write and 10 minutes to explain, it happens in a fraction of a second. So this whole thing will happen in less than a second in you. So in order to understand it simply, you have a situation, you have a trigger and a message, which is the need for action. Now I will take one example here, just one example to kind of make it more clear. Let's say that there is a child who is in a school, and the child comes out of the school at the end of the day and notices that the parents are not there to pick him up. Now that's the situation. What emotion the child will get will depend upon what is triggered in the child in that situation. So in the same situation, different children will get different emotions. So if the child is, let's say, focusing too much on the extroverted environment, then what will happen is the child will look at, there is nobody in the environment, I'm alone here. So the child will get fear, because there is a threat, there is a danger, something can happen. The child doesn't know what can happen, so the child will get fear. And the demand of the fear is security. So the child will be shrinking and kind of trying to find a place to hide, or trying to find a place where the child can be, child can be good, feel comfortable. So the child is looking for security and comfort. That's the need for that emotion of fear. Fear always looks for security and comfort. So now in the same situation, there could be another feeling or another emotion which will be coming. The child comes out, and the child is like, not an extroverted person, so doesn't focus much on the fear, but sees that there is parents are not there, and the child starts thinking like, my parent did not come today to pick me up. Maybe they don't love me. They abandoned me. The feeling of abandonment will create a different kind of fear. Not fear, a different kind of emotion. And in fact, the feeling of abandonment itself is an emotion. So now it will not need for security. It will need for love. It will need for reassurance, not the security. So if the parent come and then they respond to, let's say, the extroverted feeling in the child, then the child will feel misunderstood, because the child is looking for love, you are giving the security. And that kind of situation happens in our day-to-day interaction with people, is that people respond, people have a different need, and we see it differently, and without checking it with them, we offer our solution. So emotions, if you want to develop emotional intelligence, you need to look at this from the person who is feeling, the person in the situation, and from the viewpoint of the other. So that gets me to the fourth point, that you need a sounding board in order to do that back and forth play, in order to understand the emotion. I have emphasized it enough that the emotions, exist in relationship only. So in order to get to the reality, or get to the real emotion, you need to listen. You need to listen to the other person, and not just hear, or not just see and make assumption. And how to listen? I will suggest one exercise on developing listening ability. One I can demonstrate here, right here, in this session, and one I will suggest as take-home exercise. Now, I'm going to speak differently. Attentivenow. Now, pause for a minute and ask yourself, did your attention level changed when I was speaking like that? That's what listening is. Because what you did for few moments, you kind of forgot everything else and you were focusing totally on what I was saying. That's what listening is. Okay, so this is one part of listening. Another part of listening is to understand it from the perspective of the other person. And for that, this is the exercise for home. Make a list of things that you have very strong opinion about, and basically strongly negative opinion. So for example, if you don't like gays, then that could be in your list, is that I don't like people who are gay. If you don't like people who cut yourself in the middle while you're speaking, write that. I really hate people who do that. I really hate people who do not come forward to help people when other people are in need. So that could be your strong point. So make list of things for which you have a very, very strong opinion. And then imagine that you are a lawyer and they hired you to fight their case in the court, and try to formulate your argument to support their view. Now, if you do that as an exercise, you will develop an amazing ability to listen to others. You don't need to agree with them, but you will develop this ability to listen to their perspective, understand their perspective, and ultimately you will develop empathy, which is a very, very important skill in developing emotional intelligence. So, and this exercise I have done like in the workshop. When I do workshop on that, I do it like full exercise, 2 hours roughly, this thing. And it has been very, very effective. You can write a letter, for example, explaining as if you are, not emotionally involved in, but just logically, you are explaining what could be. Right? Now, Sheen asked, what was the sentence that you were spelling out? Nice, Navshin. I'll send you the video. You can see in that. And then how to check if you understood the person or not. The golden rule to understand it is ask. Ask your interlocutor what you understood. Just say the same thing and ask, did I understand you? And if the person says yes, it means that you listened. If the person says no, not really, it means that the listening did not happen fully. So the determinant of whether the listening happened or not is the person who is the sender and not the receiver. So if I'm saying something to you and you are listening, you tell me back what you understood, and if I say yes, it means that you have demonstrated a good listening ability. You have demonstrated good listening. And this kind of listening is very therapeutic in nature. And because of that, it is very taxing, not toxic, but very taxing. It takes a lot of energy. So you have to do it very actively and for a few time only. You cannot do it all the time. So that's the step 4. Get a sounding board and practice this listening. So develop emotional literacy, make yourself more aware, do that mapping, and then get a sounding board. And now the last.
Vijay, time wise, I think we are just 12 o'clock. So I think maybe you have, this is your last slide, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yes. And then we can take 10 more minutes for our questions.
For discussion, open and
yes, please. Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot.
And the last thing for emotional intelligence development is developing the ability to analyze the emotion undercurrent so that you can manage the relationship. So managing relationship part. For example, if you are responsible for keeping a team motivated, then you must realize that there is always an emotional undercurrent in any communication that is conveyed. In each conversation, you have a cognitive part and an emotive part. And the way you pay attention to make your message proper and clear, in the same way, you should ask yourself question, what is the emotion that I want to convey? And through this analysis, you will know what is the most useful emotion. So, for example, I'll give you a situation to think over. Is that you are going to have a meeting, and the meeting is about how to work differently given the constraints that are prevalent right now. Now, in addition to address the practical procedural needs for it, you need to also address the emotional need. So for example, you should ask yourself, what are the people feeling right now? How should I verify that, whether the people I'm going to talk to, they are feeling that thing or not? Second, what is the emotional state that I want to create? So what is the most important emotion which can be used in this moment? You need to ask that. And then you need to cater your message accordingly. So that's the analysis part of it. And most misunderstandings or most problems in relationship happen because of failure of doing this part properly. And I will give in one example here, and that would be my last thing to end, is that your colleague tells you in length how bad she feels about the new assignment, and you offer help, and then she replies, do you think I'm incapable of doing things on my own? So what did you miss here? Is that the person wants to just vent out, looking for emotional support, not procedural or administrative or competence-based support. So you need to ask, rather than offering help, you need to ask. First, you tell what you understood from what she told you, and then you need to ask, so do you want me to do anything, or what do you want me to do? How can I help you? And then, then the conversation moves forward. But if you ask this kind of, if you offer help, it might be sometimes coming, bouncing in a bad way if you did not pay attention to the emotional part very well. Have you felt this? Have you felt this kind of situation at home or at work? That you offer to help somebody and the person says that, do you think that I'm incapable? I can do that on my own. I was just telling you. Yeah. So that's like I see some people say that, yeah. It happens a lot between husband and wife, by the way, a lot. The wife wants to just say things and the husband wants to do things. So then here is the, one-liner formula: feel, think, act, reflect, repeat. That's the cycle of developing emotional intelligence. So that's all from my side. Thank you. Namaste. And now questions.
Vijay, fantastic. And I think we are having flow of questions coming in. I will just take it up immediately. Deepak is asking a question like, most of the emotions and feelings are originating from expectations. So what does one control first, expectations or emotions?
We need to look at what we can control. Can we control expectation? We can ask ourselves that we should not be expecting that, but that itself is an expectation. So expectation is something that you cannot control. You can be aware of that, and by being aware, it dissolves. But you cannot control it. You cannot consciously expect or change the direction of your expectation or change your expectation. It will come no matter what. So what you can do is to recognize, acknowledge it. But in terms of emotions and feelings, once you identify them, you can move them. You can channelize them to something different. Let's say, for example, if you get angry, and if you're not aware of that you're getting angry, what happens is that the anger will lead you. But if you're aware of that, you're getting angry, you will look at the message for the anger and need for the anger. The message for the anger is that something went wrong, something is violated. So that's the message of anger. So you ask yourself, okay, what is violated? And you communicate to the person that, okay, this is, I think, violated and it gets me angry. And then you can channelize, it needs to change. So then you can ask yourself, okay, what should be changed here in the situation, in the other person, or in me? And you discuss. So what you are doing is that you are channelizing your anger to curiosity. You are channelizing your anger to, you are mellowing it and putting it into curiosity to find a solution. But expectation in all cases will be there, and you have no control over it.
Yeah.
So best we can do is to realize expectation. Like realize means be aware of that expectation.
Vijay, can you stop sharing your screen so that we can see all of us if you are on video, so that we can see
Okay.
you actually? Yeah.
Okay,
Good.
I stopped.
Okay. Naushin is asking that, see, you have mentioned about children not being aware of the feelings, but do not know how to manage. I mean, they're aware of the feelings, but do not know how to manage those things. How can we help children as parents to manage their emotions once they have been able to recognize their emotions? As a parent, how can I teach emotional intelligence? That's what is a crisp this one. So.
Oh yeah, this is something I think I can say with experience. Also, I'm father of 2 children, 7 and 5. And what I have done is that I don't get much time to spend with them, like maximum 2 hours or 3 hours a day maximum. So what I have done as a rule is that when I prepare them, like for example, I put the dress on, I feed them and everything I do, and then I leave them to the school bus. So I always ask them, like, how are you feeling now? And then they tell me. And then when they come from the school, I always ask them what happened in the school and how that made you feel. So in that process, they are actually developing first the vocabulary, then they are segregating this, and then they are analyzing that emotion. And there is a very, very nice movie. It is called Inside Out. It's a cartoon movie. It is about understanding emotions from children's perspective. So it shows some characters, and then when those characters have that situation which triggers, let's say, anger, then they show the behavior of anger, the need for anger, the message of anger, and that movie was very helpful. So sometimes we watch it together. There is also a deck of cards which are related to emotion. I can post that link also sometimes if people are interested in that. It can be used with adult also to develop that emotional vocabulary and understanding.
Vijay, even I do it with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they're feeling angry or anything, I sit with them and tell them, okay, this is what is happening with you. Now you have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
This you can do, or these are the options you can take it to being more constructive than destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And how you can channelize if somebody is teasing you, because my kids are in adolescence, so they have that kind of challenge also.
Yeah. Mm.
So in case if somebody is teasing you or challenging you something, prove them wrong. One is getting into fight and using abusive language or something. You have the option, so use it in a right way, prove them wrong. Yes, you can achieve this thing and you're better. And when you achieve something in life, people will follow you. So this is even telling them how to channelize their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I think we have more and more questions coming up, and let me move on. Sanchita, you were asking about some books on for daily practice on EI. I think if you Google out, there are thousands and thousands. But anyway, I think Vijay, you want to suggest anything? Daniel Goleman is my favorite, but for you, I think
actually Goleman, what he talks about the outcome of emotional intelligence, not the process.
So
He's a what I call is a journalist in emotional intelligence. He collects information from different sources, and then he says that, okay, if you use emotional intelligence, this will happen, that will happen, that will happen. So to me, it's like, Satya Narayan ki katha in the rural areas, like, if you listen to katha, it will happen. If you listen to katha, that will happen. But what is the real katha? So that, I think you have to look at Mayor
Solvay's book, and
also.
Travers also has written very good.
And also, you have to look at the process model for that.
Yeah.
Because they talk about how to develop it.
Yes.
And this is what we're discussing here today, like the process model.
Correct. So do we need to keep our emotions aside while dealing with others? How do we do that?
You cannot. If you keep your emotion aside, you will use one emotion to keep other emotion aside. So it is impossible. It's like, can we talk without words? Well.
Then the relationship between desire and expectations. I think we talked about expectations and emotions. Now here it is desire and expectations. Is there a relationship?
Desire is actually a very interesting thing, and there is a very nice video by Jiddu Krishnamurti and desire. What happens is that if you observe like how desire happens, you see something, like you see a beautiful building, or you see a beautiful tree, or you see a beautiful flower, and it generates some feeling in you. Like, I see a flower, it's beautiful, I feel happy, I feel connected, I feel like being close to that, observing, being in the company of that flower. Till then, what is happening is that there is a relationship between me and the flower which is being established. But then what happens? A thought comes to my mind. The thought is that I should keep this flower with me. And then the desire born. So a kind of a thought of possession, a thought of making something which is temporary, fragile, but beautiful as permanent. A thought of attaching, like having an ownership on that. That is desire. So
incidentally, that was my question, Vijay.
What sort of problem in the world? It's like, you loved me yesterday, so you love me today also. No, yesterday I was a different person. Today I'm a different person. I might not love you. If love happens, that's good. But just because it happened yesterday, it will also happen today. That's the desire. That's the calm. Like in Indian thought system, that is calm.
So we are having something more asking that in managing self, what are the best possible ways in terms of anger, pain, and weep? I think that's a little larger subject, but if you want to very concisely answer.
In short, like when you get in pain, the first thing you need to ask is that, what is the message? So, for example, if you have pain, it means that you feel violated and you feel weak. If you are violated and you feel strong, then you will not be in pain, you will be in anger. So you see that what in me which gives me this feeling of weakness. So then you will find it. And then the pain, like the pain has a message to move or change. Then you see what I need to change. So pain and anger, they have the same message. But anger is more active and pain is more passive.
Abhilash, thank you. If you wanted to know further any information, please contact me. I'm there on the LinkedIn, and I'll share my WhatsApp also. And I will any other things, doubts or anything, we will clear for you, not a problem. And I think
and then I'm again putting that link.
Link also please put it, and the movie's name. Once more you repeat.
It's Inside Out. This
Inside Out is written there. Yeah, that's what it is.
And the movie is Inside Out.
Yeah. So there's one more question. If you're working on increasing your EI, is there possibility that you will feel or experience emotions more strongly, even negative emotions that one does not want to face such a pain, such as pain, guilt, etc.?
No, actually, it doesn't happen. What happens is that you don't feel them more strongly. You feel them as strongly as you were feeling before, because it depends upon your innate emotional sensitivity. Some people are more sensitive, some are less sensitive.
Yeah.
But what will happen that you will be more aware of it. So it will not. So earlier, what happens that, let's say for people with low emotional intelligence development, what happens is that if they have high intensity, high sensitivity, they will fall more sick. They will fall more ill. they will have more physiological symptoms, because what is happening, that emotion is there in high intensity, but it is not acknowledged, it is not seen, so it reflects itself in some form of physical ailment. When they become more aware, then they will suddenly see that, oh, now I'm feeling emotions too strong, but their physical symptoms will reduce. So it's not that it was the intensity has increased, but you became more aware about that intensity.
Yeah. So there's one more quick question: how to deal with emotionally biased people who have preconceived notions about things, not ready to change, and are difficult listeners.
Asking questions and
Yeah.
and sharing with them what you feel. For example, when they say that, okay, so I see you making this statement, just repeat that statement, and it gives me the feeling that I don't want to talk to you. It's disconnection. I feel disconnected with you. And then what makes you think so, or what makes you feel so? If you ask questions, so you express how you feel. Doesn't matter whether they will, kind of say, okay, I don't care what you feel. But it doesn't change the fact that I feel it. So that's why developing emotional intelligence involves what we call a vulnerability, like having the courage to be open to, your inside, how you feel, and put it outside. So questions
yeah.
and sharing how you feel. This is how you induce the attitudinal change in other people.
Right.
And most importantly, asking questions more in like neutral form. For example, don't ask why, because why question is very much highly loaded with connotation. For example, if you say, why do you think so? You are challenging the person. Instead of that, ask, what makes you feel so? So what you are doing is that you are externalizing the cause, and the person becomes less offensive, less defensive.
Right.
So instead of why, ask what.
Yeah, Deepak, have you attended the sessions earlier in this week, or you're attending the first session? I'm not very sure, but it is not a personal question, and highly emotionally intelligent people make, yes, good human beings, not only good wife or husband. And we are not prescribing anything, we are telling practice emotional intelligence. So actually he was trying to tell that, sorry to ask a personal question, but it was addressed to everyone. There is no personal question. That means, can we conclude all emotionally intelligent people make a good wife and husband? Can we prescribe this to all bachelors or unmarried? So I feel, yes, it is not only for bachelors or unmarried or whatever. It is emotional intelligence is for everyone, every age, and for every gender, everyone. Right, then please share faculty coordinates. Yes, definitely, Vasant, you will be having it. You already have it. You have it everywhere put. So don't worry, we will again share it with you. What are the disadvantages of being emotionally intelligent? They say ignorance is a bliss. No, no, no. There are no disadvantages. But if you wanted to,
which I encounter very often, like,
yeah,
what is the advantage? Like, ignorance is bliss. And that's very, very true. Ignorance is bliss. But the thing is that you have no choice. Either you go into the process of knowing consciously, or you will be pushed into that. And you have to choose what kind of pain you want. A pain that you are going through willingly, or a pain that you are being pushed into. So as human beings, we are doomed to be, there is a very famous line in psychoanalysis, it's called, humans are doomed to be competent. Means that once you know something, you just cannot undo it. And that's the basic sin which, Adam and Eve committed, is the knowledge of knowing. So there is no way going back. That path is done. That's you cannot go back. It is impossible to undo that. So it is inevitable. Either you are pushed into a situation, or you are pushed into the emotional, let's say, the emotional situation, or you enter into it. So there is a cost of ignorance, though sometimes it is bliss. But then, at the same time, knowing something is always better than not knowing. Like a known devil is better than an unknown God. So
So,
you
Vijay, I think we have still so many going on. So, I would request you to be very concise because
no,
otherwise I
I
cannot.
was like, I can tell you
I'm
how I
sorry.
was feeling
I know
with,
it is very
like,
difficult.
since yesterday,
Yes.
just the thought of having 100 people, I was like, oh my God, no, 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 no. I cannot even talk to 100 people. Come on.
Yeah. So, but you see, very nice. Admin, she's asking, can you suggest some methods on way to control or handle one's emotions? I would not say control, but handle one's emotions is a better question. Yeah. So, you wanted to give some tip for him? Can you suggest some methods or ways to handle one's emotions? It's a better thing, not
Like
a control.
emotion in
Don't
self.
get control.
You mean like emotion
Emotion.
itself, not in the other person, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, can you suggest some methods or ways to handle or control one's emotions? It is not control, maybe regulate is a better this one. Regulate your emotions or handle
Yes.
one's emotions.
The first thing that is needed for doing that, like controlling or regulating one's own emotions, is to be aware of the natural course of development of an emotion. For example, an anger never starts with anger, never. It always starts with irritation, minor irritation, then it develops into anger, then it develops into rage. So in the same way, sadness doesn't start with sadness. Happiness doesn't start with happiness. So it starts with something always. This is the path. Like, you directly don't jump into anger. So if you find yourself directly jumping into anger, it means that you have not been aware of how it has started from the minor annoyance and then it developed into anger. So number one, study the path. So there is a lot of material available over internet, and especially I would suggest that study the authors. Like, don't study those articles which are spread everywhere, but take an author, for example, uh, Mayer and Salovey. Take them and read their books. They have take Ekman, Paul Ekman. Take people who have done work on identifying emotion, and then you see that how it develops. So once you have a cognitive understanding of it, next time when it will come, you will start noticing it. So you will start noticing before anger became so strong that it cannot be now managed. So what happens is that any emotion, it starts with very small bodily sensation, and then it grows into, and after some time it becomes unmanageable. So first thing is to do something to bring that level down. And for each emotion, there are different strategies to bring that level down. For example, if you get anger getting into you more, take a deep breath and the anger will be gone. So, and deep breath, don't hold it. Like, take the breath and leave it. Take it and leave it, and the anger will be gone. Or take a glass of water. Move your position. If you feel sad, for example, if you are in grip of sadness, so sadness is very, very high, you cannot do anything about it. Just make one attempt, and it is easy to make that attempt with sadness, is call someone. Just call, that's all. And then you will see that it changes. So first you need to bring that intensity down, and technically we call it emotional highways. So you have, like, if you are going on a highway at a very high speed and you have to change the lane, you have to first slow down and then change. Same way, you have to bring down this intensity to moderate, and then you have your resource emotion. So each emotion is having some kind of companion emotion. So for example, you cannot be from anger, can go from anger to happiness. It has to go between the curiosity. So from anger, you go to curiosity, then you go to happiness. And this path is also well studied and well documented by researchers and by practitioners. So the more, if you read about it and have more information, then you can use that.
Right. Juhi, I think while Vijay was answering to the previous thing, I think he has taken care of what you have asked also. How to hold up in a situation which, when you know that you cannot change much, or you are there to have been for a long time. Arpita, you are asking that, can you please repeat the psychoanalysis statement?
Yeah, Ajay, it is said by Carl Jung, and
Yeah.
I think I posted on my
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn timeline
Yes.
also this thing with exact quotation and all.
Okay.
Where it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's. I remember it's volume 18, personality development, Carl Jung collected works.
Right.
There is a lecture on personality development, so it's from
Perfect.
there.
So Sandhya, if you're asking about repeat the author name, is it you're asking for EI? If it is EI, it is this is Peter Solvay and Meyer and or Daniel Goldman, or anything else you wanted to also tell, Vijay?
Yeah, Paul Ekman.
Paul Ekman also
Very
there.
very good work.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay, I think we are half an hour we have taken for clearing all the questions, and I think we are done. I hope that we have taken care of all the questions, all the statements, all the views, everything has come up, and it was indeed a great
Anyway, this
session.
is a journey to start. It's not a destination that.
I know. We just started, and we have.
It's a stoppage.
Yes, but if anyone, I mean, I think there isn't anything in the chat box as of now. I think I have cleared everything. But the people who are there still and just wanted to have some comment or something, because we have still 50% of the crowd